Land Raider Crusaders. Welcome, gentle listener, I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and faces of the Warhammer 40k setting, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. Now, if you enjoy these videos, do sling me a like and a subscribe, and click the notification button, as they aren't that frequent and YouTube has a new system over there, throttling older and less glamorous channels. So lend a bold a hand if you're of a mind to do so, and check if you have been unsubscribed. It's happening a lot at the present. And today, we shall be taking a look into one of the most brutal weapons in the arsenal of the Imperium of Man. Practically a newcomer to the armies of humanity, as it was only developed in the 39th millennium. During the Gerulas Crusade, it has made an impact that is far in excess of its time clocked on in the battlefields of the far future. Of course, I can only be speaking of the Land Raider Crusader. Now, to show, not just tell, a wee tale to give you some idea of what they are and what they do. From the Board Library, Angry Boxes. It had happened again. Castellan Bervold sighed as he strode to the Black Gates, two massive fortifications that were the centre of his defensive position, one that he despised, of course. Like all of his sword brethren, he wished to be out there, in the thick of it, bringing the Emperor's justice to the scum who surrounded his position. Oh, they had attacked again and again, but each time they were easily repulsed. On the fourth assault, the Templars did not even bother to fire down on the hordes that came at them, and they practically permitted the foe to bring their siege ladders to bear. But all knew these scum would not be victorious. As elements of the mob would reach the parapets, they were slaughtered by the swordsmen of the Black Templars. The most death that had probably occurred that day was from the idiots who had made it up the ladders, then falling down on their allies. Alas, the gambit had failed. The enemy had stopped attacking their position. They merely waited out the Templars. Fabian tactics, one would presume, thought Bervold. Strange that such an unwashed mass would be able to, by accident or ingenuity, stumble across one of the oldest strategies in the book. To not attack the foe directly, but to stay close. Always threatening, but never engaging. Hence the Black Templars could not sally forth and reposition, nor could they defeat the enemy. It was a waiting game as far as the enemy were envisioning matters. They seemed to believe that the Templars would simply leave as soon as their consumables and water were all used. Yet the Templars were awaiting one thing. It was not food or water. Well, not in the conventional manner of things. And Castellan Bervold was impatient with the delays. The event he now went to break up did not help his state of mind. With a flick of a dial, he had summoned the Tech Marine, just in case. But he started anyway, in the hopes he could resolve the issue alone. Bervold now jogged a little as he saw the line of warriors approaching the gates, and seemed to be ready to barge through them. These warriors were particularly truculent, so he had to be forceful. He now approached their head and leapt up onto a pile of supply containers to give himself the elevation to be seen by all of them. Not that they needed that, of course, but it was his only dramatic flair. "How dare you neglect your posts? How dare you prepare for battle without a word of your lord, with your weapons spent and your power diminished so? Do you think any of us here wish to delay? Do you think any of us here do not wish to cry havoc and bare our teeth in the snarl of war? Yet we wait for the right time, when our hackles are up, but when our weapons are ready. If I were to allow you your head, to open the doors and permit your onward rush, how do you think this would go? How long before you are covered by the foe, and brought down by their sheer numbers alone. Even thee are not proof from bodies blocking your path. Even thee can be stopped if the foe finds your weaknesses. Even thee can be stopped by the inglorious enemy dead, stuck amongst your tracks and treads. So now I say to thee, my brothers, patience. We will take our vengeance, but it will be when I say it is time. Not 1 moment before, not 1 moment thereafter. The line of 4 vehicles seemed to shudder and spew even more black smoke out of their ports. An indicant of rebellion is what Bervold thought. Yet it was a last show of dissatisfaction alone. As one, the Land Raiders turned and slowly moved back to their holding areas. They retook position and closed down their engines. Bervold knew not one driver was amongst them. With a sigh of relief, Bervold began his trudge back to his command center. The Crusade had suffused even these ancient weapons with zeal, their machine spirits ablaze with righteous fury at their inactivity. Bervold was never sure if they understood his words or just his tone. For the time being, they were under control again. For the time being. Bervold looked up at the blue skies, always a little intrepid about them. He had grown up in a hive city. He mistrusted so much open space, let alone above him. Yet then he saw it, a sight for tired eyes. Coming out of the sun, teardrop metallic missiles coming down on his position. He fist-bumped the air and yelled for all to be prepared. His Vox speed taking his command to the entire formation, they all now dived to the closest window or door to see what he meant. And then they came slamming down. 4 drop pods landing in his mighty courtyard. Precise. But then there was little choice, as he was surrounded by his enemies. The doors to the pods popped open, and Bervold grinned. No Marines walked or jumped from the transport, but what was inside was all he needed to end this little event, as he saw container after container of bolter ammunition therein. Within half an hour, the stack of bolter rounds had been brought to the growling tanks, and every last weapon was filled to bursting, spare boxes stacked within. The Crusade squads of Marines loaded up into the Land Raiders, then all 4 went back to the doors, this time with the full endorsement of the Castellan. He gave the word, and the mighty doors were opened by servitors. The Land Raiders then poured out of the fortification and rushed headlong into the densely packed scum outside. Their hurricane bolters and assault cannons scything down hundreds and smashing the cohesion of their lines. They did not stop. They plowed straight into anyone who stood their ground, crushing them under their massive tracks. This went on. The slaughter was great. It did not abate until the Land Raiders dug deep within the cultist lines, so far that they were within striking distance of the rebel leadership. Then the ramps went down, and the Crusader squads were unleashed. 16 Black Templars charged down the assault ramps of each Land Raider, slaughtering their way to the flags fluttering only tens of meters away. Chainsaws whirred and power weapons sizzled as they tore through the undisciplined scum. All the while, the Land Raider Crusaders turned to the sides and provided flanking cover. Nothing would stop the Black Templars. Their steeds would not permit it. Ah, the Land Raider Crusader. I've got one. When the darkest closes in and the enemies are ranked deep, a seemingly unbreakable wall of flesh between you and the objective, there can be no substitute for the Land Raider Crusader. And I think of this variant as an analogue to the battle barge itself. Both are fearsome weapons of war, able to smash their foes when the conditions are right, but they are equivalent for one simple reason. They are not the main danger. It is their payload that provides a real threat. For the battle barge is hardly the most lethal ships of its class, which is a battleship, by the way. Their firepower is short-ranged, and their resilience is their greatest strength. Such is it also for the Land Raider Crusader. Both have one payload that is more lethal than anything on the outside of their chassis, and this would be their complement of Astartes, Angels of Death, Space Marines. Now one could instantly rebel and might bark out that all Land Raiders contain the Angels of Death, and this of course would be true, for they are, more than anything, transports. But this particular mark of Land Raider leans into this proposition beyond near anything but the Mastodon, and I can assure you, few people have ever witnessed a Mastodon in the thick of it, both on the tabletop and in the modern age Indomitors. The Land Raider Crusader is now ubiquitous in nearly every bloodline of the Space Marines. It truly is the premier assault vehicle, but let us now discuss its pedigree, its origin. Now, the Land Raider chassis was originally developed during the Dark Age of Technology, and its STC, or Standard Template Construct, like a blueprint, was discovered by Arkan Land in the many hidden vaults under the red sands of Mars. It was then put into mass production for the Great Crusade, and became iconic of the Space Marine legions from there on in. The Land Raider Crusader is a variant of the Land Raider Phobos, yet not one found or discovered amongst the dust of ancient worlds or forgotten libraries. No, this piece of martial magnificence was actually cobbled together on the fly, mid-campaign, by an artificer of the Black Templars. Who else? Yes, he was reported to have used newfound archaeotech to assist in this process, but the creation of the new variant was all his own work, taken from his vision, brought into reality through his hard graft, and purely to resolve an issue which had been vexing his brothers in arms. And it is no surprise at all that the new design was an amazing hit. What is more surprising is that the Mechanicus sent delegations to interrogate both its creator and the pattern, but did not attempt to burn the potential tech heretic there and then. But, to be fair, standing in the middle of a Black Templar crusade force does tend to erode the central column of anyone's back somewhat, if not lead to outright unmanning themselves through lack of fecal or urinary discipline. So, when the Crusader pattern was scrutinized, there was no outright objection to the weapon, and from there it went into mass production across many Forge Worlds and Fortress Monasteries, across the length and breadth of the Imperium of Man. But why is it so damn popular? Well, that's easy. Because, as stated previously, it leans into its role perfectly, and does exactly what it says on the tin. It is a heavy assault transport, and little else. Now the Guard and other armies may like redundancy in their equipment, or a more general use and benefit, one might say, but the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines, are such an elite force that they require their support equipment to be exceptionally honed and concentrated in the discipline or utility for which it will be deployed. Because they are the lightning bolt of the human race, their spear tips are blooded fast, and their role is to smash the attacker or defender so swiftly that they can then move on to other engagements, deployments, or even other theatres entirely. They do not play mop-up. For the Space Marines are exceptionally rare. Many humans never even witness one in their entire lives, and it is good for them if they do not, as the Space Marines are reserved for only the most rugged and vital battles, where nothing other than 8-foot manic killing machines in power armor will do the job. Hence, their war gear is very specific. Okay, I've lauded it to the high heavens, but what is a Land Raider Crusader? Well, this is actually quite simple. The usual Land Raider is as formidably armoured as the Crusader, but it has a Godhammer las cannon on either side of its frame. This makes it a threat to any fortification, armour or enemy on the field, because the Godhammer las cannon is no laughing matter. They of course have other weapons, like the hunter-killer missile and the storm or heavy bolters, or even multi-melters on top. Melty. But the Land Raider Crusader is not so superlatively armed for general assaults, because it was developed during a need to sweep and clean out entire hives of scum. Where it shines is in massed battles, or in one of the most dangerous types of combat, the cityscape. From Leningrad to Stalingrad, the most terrible battles have always been in close confined theatres, and there is no butchery worse than a city battle. Every window can contain a sniper or heavy weapons team. Every corner heralds a slaughter for those who cross it or turn it. Every open space is certain death, and every alley is a bloodbath in the making. In these situations, huge firepower, like the Godhammer las cannon, are almost useless. For these types of conflict, the most important facet is to have overwhelming close proximity firepower, and the Crusader does this quite nicely. It replaces the side sponson las cannons with 2 hurricane bolter arrays. Imagine 2 bolters strapped together, then stacked in 3 or 4 couples, one on top of the other. This is a hurricane bolter, and its firepower is to a crowd as grape shot was during the time, a barrage of shot that will slaughter mobs and masses with ease. Now the Crusader also has a twin-linked assault cannon on it, on the top, and this adds to the furious firepower that can rip through near anything below main battle tanks. So, we know the Crusader can dish out anti-infantry firepower, near as mighty as that of the modern-day repulsor. Yet, this is still not its main weapon. The lack of power capacity for 2 las cannons has created a large amount of space within the cabin of the tank, which means even more Marines can be placed inside. Now a normal Land Raider has the capacity to take in as many as a dozen Marines, but the Crusader can fit in a healthy 16 Astartes. And it has the usual assault ramp, meaning that this little monster rolls forward, most weapons bouncing off its incredibly durable hide. It gets into close proximity and reaps down masses of foes. Then it disgorges a huge complement of Marines directly into the battle. Now one can totally understand why it was created by the Black Templars. Although they can be as deadly as near any other chapter of Space Marines at range, as they are sons of Rogel, it is in close that they truly shine. Their fanatical charges are amusing to all, until they hit. And then their concentration on melee makes their onward charge a force of nature. A tsunami of plasteel and power weapons that few in the galaxy can even hope to endure, let alone succeed against. And this is why the Black Templars deploy more of this mark of Land Raider than any other. For with this devastating transport, the Black Templars can get more men into the thick of the fray. It may not seem much if viewed alone. What is 4 Marines? But when you factor that, it gets so much worse. Because if there are only 5 of these Land Raiders, it means that a full 2 more squads are now in butchery range. 20 men to any other formation may not be much, but for those fighting against the Space Marines, it is very often the difference between victory or swift and total defeat. If you enjoyed this video, then do leave me a like and subscribe, and then, if you wish, turn on notifications. They're not that regular. And thank you for your precious time. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.